Hello, and welcome to our interview session on design thinking. It is a privilege to introduce Mr. Abhijeet Kumar to you today, and a privilege because I think he is someone who epitomizes design thinking with the diverse experience and skills that he brings with him. So here you have someone who's a poet at heart, an engineer by profession, and also somebody who has a management degree. He's worked with the world's largest mine, so that's Rio Tinto. And amongst other things, I think after a while he realized that there's something more meaningful that he wishes to do. So now he's in the social sector, helping children, governments, and
not-for-profit organizations.
Yes, non-profit organizations to come up with meaning, solutions, and interventions using design thinking. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Likewise. Can you tell us very briefly your journey to design thinking? So from an engineering background to management to design thinking, how did that happen?
So I would talk about my experience in two buckets. The first one being more the corporate side of it,
Yes.
working with automotive and mining kind of organizations.
Yes.
The second bucket is the more social impact
Yes.
space,
Yes.
wherein I got to experience real world problems with a focus on health,
Yes.
and chose to work at the intersection of healthcare, technology and behavior change, designing and implementing, piloting and scaling solutions
Yes.
to address few of the most pressing problems
Yes.
that the society faces today.
Yes.
I think that in this journey, the whole aspect of designing really surfaced itself and got me thinking and interested into the segment.
Okay.
And that was the initiation. I guess I haven't looked back.
Excellent. So when you talk about your work in the social sector, so have you worked with, let's say, underprivileged girls? And is there any particular issue that you worked with and you'd like to share the story with us?
So I've worked on nutrition,
Yes.
maternal and child health,
Yes.
worked on screening and treatment of cervical pre-cancer,
Okay.
worked with the government on designing and implementing programs in the space of screening and testing. So that was a problem we addressed from two sides. One was the supply side,
Yes.
wherein you strengthen the government systems and the
Yes.
supply side of it.
Yes.
The other part is the demand side,
Yes.
wherein you encourage women from communities and their family members also to ensure that females in their families are getting tested.
Yes.
And that required a lot of human-centered studies,
Yes.
wherein you try to understand the barriers,
Yes.
the challenges,
Yes.
and also understand what are the nudges that you would
Yes.
use
Yes.
to really ensure that women come back,
Yes.
get a test of 15 minutes duration done,
Yes.
and help them save their lives and probably eradicate the only cancer that can be actually eradicated from the globe.
That's really awe-inspiring. So I've often wondered, when we say human-centered approach, yes it is, and that's why I think it is a source of inspiration. Having said that, the core idea behind design thinking being empathy. So when you work with team, when you work with others, do you think it's difficult for people to be empathetic at a very human level? Or do you think it's something that comes naturally and you just need to tap that?
It is difficult. Not everyone is really geared to put themselves in someone else's shoe
Yes.
and understand. It is difficult to be unbiased.
True, true, yes.
Empathy, I think empathy mapping is just a term which we have really formalized. But
Yes.
and when we talk about design, it's not a phenomena of today or 5 years down the line.
Yes.
It has been there since ages.
Correct.
And a simple example would be the design of a toothbrush or a
Yes.
hairbrush. That did not happen today. Today we understand, accept it, and it's a terminology that is used by the masses.
Correct.
But being able to have a non-biased perspective, coming back, I would say that it's a combination of a lot of science
Yes.
and art as well.
Correct.
The art aspect requires you to understand problems, think from a user's perspective.
Yes.
The science part helps you understand it from a framework and a very deeply rooted and a statistical research perspective.
Correct.
Bring that research orientation into your solutioning.
Yes.
So it's a combination of that. The words and the terminologies in the 5 stages can vary.
Absolutely.
But at the core, you're trying to solve a problem,
Yes.
and you want the solution to really address the problem at its
Yes.
core,
Yes.
and you also want the solution to be adopted,
Yes.
scaled,
Yes.
all this in a sense that addresses logic on the time,
Correct.
cost, quality, and service parameters.
Yes.
So that's it. That's what design is all about.
Yes, I agree with you. And sometimes when we talk about the nature of design thinking, so it's not meant to be perfect. It's an iterative methodology, and it cherishes imperfections and lack of information. And you're not compelled to come up with the right answers, right? You just need to figure stuff out. And so this is very different from, let's say, the corporate world, where it's more about efficiency and you want answers and you're uncomfortable with ambiguity. So, and a lot of people are now transferring design thinking into management. So how do you think that's going to work out?
So I think as a generation, there's a bit of evolution that has happened in this
Yes,
space.
yes.
There was a time when we used to think of projects using the waterfall model,
Yes.
wherein you design the start and the end at the
Yes.
onset. Then there was no scope of iterating in the middle.
Yes,
Today we are all thinking of agile systems,
yes,
wherein you have the scope of iterating in the process.
Yes.
So now this is a concept that is well understood,
yes,
and people are accepting it. At the core of design thinking,
Yes.
iteration lies.
Yes.
There's no final solution.
Absolutely.
There are incremental improvements that you keep on making.
absolutely.
And there's a classic example for
Yes.
that. Sometimes in the early 1900s, there was this gentleman who observed a few air hostesses carrying their bags. And this gentleman thought that, let me put a wheel on this bag. He put a wheel on that bag, but he put it very horizontally.
Yes,
Later on, he got a patent for that
yes,
and moved out of it and said that, okay, now I'm going to set up a company on these lines.
Yes.
Another gentleman came and he said, let me improvise on this
yes,
design.
yes,
He put those wheels in a vertical alignment and
Yes.
also ensured that he put a handle across for people to carry it.
yes.
Now this became so popular that
Yes.
that later on all the cabins and the cabin storage spaces were designed to fit the dimension of these bags.
Yes.
This was not done in one go. It was a
Yes.
very iterative process.
Yes.
And look where we are today.
Correct. And that's the beauty of it, that there is no end. You keep working on solutions. Moving a little to a thread that's slightly different, and this I've been wanting to talk about this for a long while now. So if you look at the design thinking mindset, it's also connecting different things, and also when you have something very abstract and you kind of bring it out in the world with some comfort and ease, and others can use it. And I was thinking, so if you look, and I don't mean to do it in a very cliched kind of way. So if you look at India, and when I talk of ancient India, and I talk of things like, let's say Ayurveda, for example, I think it's a human-centered approach to medicine. And it's also beautifully interconnected. And there are many other things like Vastu. So Vastu was the spirit of the house. And it's supposed to give you prosperity, health and happiness. And not only in architecture, right? So it's not comfort. It's what a home should be all about. And I think we developed knowledge systems beautifully. What happened in between? Why is it so difficult for us to grasp abstract things or to think like that anymore? I could be wrong.
So the question being abstract, I would give an abstract answer to it.
Yeah.
I think that there are two aspects to any problem.
Yes.
One is the empathy aspect
Yes.
on why this problem really needs to be solved.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
The other part is the engineering aspect.
Yes.
On how do you really solve this problem
Yes.
in a very optimized, effective
Yes.
way and a productive way. For a problem and a solution to be accepted,
Yes.
for a solution to be accepted,
Yes.
there's a marriage of empathy and engineering that needs to happen.
Yes.
And that's when you create the right customer base for it.
Correct.
So maybe all the things that you said,
Yes.
we have not been able to marry the customer, the engineering part and the empathy part well. And the answer could probably lie in marketing, ensuring that community mobilization happens, awareness happens. So when we are thinking of designing a solution or prototyping it, we cannot say that this is a solution I designed and this is good.
Correct.
At the end, the onus of acceptance is not on the designer,
Absolutely.
it's on the customer.
Absolutely.
So if the customer is not accepting it,
Yes.
then I think we need to go back to the
Go
drawing
back.
board and do something about it.
Yes. So like you mentioned earlier on that there is this empathy part and there's this engineering, the hard science and the art part
Yes.
of it. And so and there's the research part of it. And when you talk of research and design thinking, it's a lot of talking to people and finding out how they feel and observing them and taking down notes. Although I don't like to use the word scientific very randomly, but then how would you suggest, supposing students are doing a project on, let's say, preventing or minimizing food waste at the canteen. So I sometimes wonder that, because one is that you should be aware of your biases, but what is the good methodology or the good thing to do so that you don't get carried away by your own ideas, which people tend to?
In God we trust, rest everyone must bring data, right? Said by Deming.
Yes.
As long as you are able to quantify it, you will be able to productize the solution. So the best thing to do is, even if you're talking about perceptions,
Yes.
let's quantify perceptions, and that's pretty much possible using all the research methodologies that we have today. There's a quantitative research, there is a qualitative
Yes,
angle to the
yes.
research, and then there is a mixed model.
Yes.
There are multiple
Yes.
ways of reducing bias. Those are all academic and
Yes.
standard practices.
Yes.
So the first thing for students to do is try to quantify it, explain it, and your research or your activity must have the minimum number of respondents, which is the normal Z score
Yeah.
that we have.
Yes.
So as long as you're able to do it, you'll be able to convince us. But if a student says that I've spoken to 10 people, now that is where the conflict between
Yes.
design thinking and traditional research happens.
Yes.
Design thinking does not specify the number of people
Yes.
you need to have to build a
Correct.
particular persona,
Correct.
while research really does.
Yes.
And both of the disciplines think they are correct. That's
Yes.
the principal conflict between them. Let's choose the side of research to be
Yes.
safer in our approach,
I agree.
and it's just risk mitigation. So yeah, that's it.
I agree.
Bring data, use the logical, root things in science,
Yes.
and of course the packaging in Bollywood can happen later. But root things in science to start off with,
That's
and everything in the process is quantifiable.
So, talking of, let's say, management students, and of course we have classroom teaching and we give them projects, but where as a faculty I tend to get stuck is in prototyping, and it's not really possible because we have limited times. So given the limitations of, let's say, a classroom, how do you complete the process of design thinking? What's the best thing to do? So we want to give them meaningful projects where they experience the whole thing, but somehow it's difficult to get to the final two.
So without prototyping, you really
Absolutely.
cannot succeed.
Absolutely.
So maybe we need to go back to the drawing board and think about the design of the course in itself.
Yes.
Yes. There has to be an aspect which is out there on the field.
Yes. It can't be
Everything
in the-
cannot happen
in the
under the
classroom.
roof in the class. So let the project be done out there.
Yes.
Let the project be evaluated over a longer duration of time, because
Yes.
a typical course might last for 3 months or 4 months,
Correct.
a trimester or a semester system, whatever
Yes.
works. But that is not enough time.
Yes.
Let that be a part of their evaluation, or let that be a part of their final project evaluation,
Yes.
and see how they have really applied these learnings into that
Yes.
aspect.
That's a great idea. And again, so that's students. Now coming to the corporate world, have you heard or have you felt resistance to design thinking? Or do you think the adoption is increasing and people are realizing the worth of the idea?
I would say that the terminology, design thinking,
Yes.
is pretty much being used like the word strategy these days,
That's true. Yes.
with a lot of people actually using it. But then it's not something that you can study a couple of papers and then go out try it. It's a practice.
Yes.
There are specialists, and any person can become a specialist, but it's a practice acquired over a
Yes.
over a duration of time. And they say in Hindi na, भगवान आंखें सभी को देता है लेकिन नज़र किसी किसी को,
True.
right?
True.
दिमाग सबके पास है but
Correct.
सोच किसी किसी के पास है.
True.
It's a movie dialogue from
It's okay, yes.
but that's very much applicable. If you've practiced it, then you can be an
Yeah.
expert out
Yeah.
there. So it's important to entrust the work of redesigning to a team
Yes.
which comprises of
Yes.
people inside your organization
Absolutely.
and which also has people who present an unbiased and a third eye perspective that
Absolutely.
this is how it needs to be done. I agree with this solution, but I can see these gaps
Flaws,
as an
yeah.
outsider.
Yes.
And that's when
Yes.
the solution really works out, and that's my perspective on it. But
Absolutely.
there are organizations who have done it really well too, especially multiple social sector organizations.
Yes.
They have been able to do it
Yeah.
really well, and I would call out one organization especially,
Yes.
Educate Girls for that matter.
Yes.
They have beautifully designed how to bring back girls to school, girls education. And then later on, once their problem statement had, the narrative was old, they said, let's do one thing, let's bring the girls who have dropped out.
Hmm.
Now that is another target audience.
Yes.
All the women who got married at an early
Yes.
age, had kids, did not have the
Absolutely.
opportunity. Now their idea is to bring them back. So it did stem from a need, but there was a lot of research
Yes.
done on this.
Yes.
And yeah, they have done a beautiful job out of it, no doubt about it.
That's really nice. And this is just a thought, and I'd love you to share your thoughts on this. So, of course, there's a lot of things happening in the technology space, and you have AI, and you have, this whole conversation about AI being smarter and all of that. And then we come back to, what we as humans are good at. So, I think fundamentally our flaws make us human, kind,
Yes.
and it's scary to be completely rational, I think. Do you think design thinking is a human forte and will be one? I can't imagine machines doing design thinking ever.
Machines need a lot of data
Yes.
generated real time. They don't
Yes.
act
Yes.
on themselves, right? So if those emotions, if the repository
Yes.
of those emotions is limited,
Yes.
and there are only so many variations that can happen, and
Yes.
all of that has been fed into a machine,
Yes.
then maybe some predictable solutions can be thrown in. At the end of the day, you're trying to humanize machines.
Yes.
You're not
Yes.
replacing humans, you're just
Absolutely.
humanizing machines.
Yes.
So I would answer it from a very process perspective.
Yes.
If a machine has the capability of having empathy or studying the human behavior in its most predictable form or most unpredictable form, then maybe a machine can do, but that's in the future. And at that point also,
Yes.
I hope that we humans control those machines. So yeah, that's not a correct answer, but that's an abstract answer.
That's
But then-
perfectly all right. It's just that, why I asked this question was, you don't have to actually, tell students that this is a very valuable course. And the way I take it up as, it's like a challenge. You challenge your assumptions, you become more humble. I think you become a much better person. And so far, it's, that natural feel to design thinking, I think is so beautiful. I tell my students that it's difficult, but it's human, and that's what I find very powerful about the methodology.
I think it nudges students or practitioners to observe, to develop
Yes.
those observational things.
Yes.
And I have a classic example for
Yes,
that.
okay.
There's a low-income community near to Mumbai,
Yes.
which is Mankur and Shivaji Nagar, and I used to travel to Pune multiple times, crossing the same community,
Yes.
right? But somehow I never observed what was happening in there.
Yes.
It was only when I entered that community and spent
Yes.
good 1.5 years looking
Yeah.
at people, working
Yeah.
with people there, that I really started understanding
Yes.
lives of people staying in low income communities. Or when I worked in rural
Yes.
segment, I could see how rural segment really operates. A more classic example, we outsourced video making for an educational program.
Yes.
And the video making was simple, very simple, around hand washing techniques. Simple. The script writer wrote the script, he made a video using animated characters. The script writer and the video maker, they had never been to a community, right? So when the video came, it was a simple video and everybody in the organization said, wow, this is very nice, looks very cool. Simple thing, a mother takes her child's hand, opens the tap, water comes down, she takes a soap, rubs the soap, gets her son's hand wash, dried, comes back, end of story. That's simple. And you depicted how to wash it, all the configurations. The location where this video had to be sent was the same community to which nobody had been. One of the resources had been to the community, and this person pointed out a very simple problem. The person said that this video is nice, looks good from an aesthetic point of view, but it doesn't depict reality. So it won't work. People will not accept it. And everybody was like, why? This is like a simple video. This person comes back and says, people do not have a bathroom and a tap in the community. They buy water in gallons of 20 liters each, blue colored gallons. They store it outside, then take a mug and use the mug to pour water. So a running tap is a luxury. You cannot be normalizing luxury for them in your video because they will not accept it. Now, where do you get this observation unless you have gone through this entire phase of empathizing and observing? It's a very simple story, but I think it's one of the most powerful stories that I have come across.
So beautiful. Okay, so I was wondering that this video is going to be viewed by a lot of learners on the SWAYAM platform. So it's good that learners across the country can get content and listen to you, and we have modules. What advice would you like to give these learners who are accessing design thinking through online portal?
That you can understand the rules of the game by playing the video game, but to really enjoy the game you have to hit the football field and burn a few calories out there. The real test of the footballer is in maneuvering the ball across all the players on the real football field.
Absolutely.
So to do design thinking, please come on the real field. It cannot just be done on computers or through secondary research. There needs to be a primary element to it.
And any last bit of advice you'd like to give our learners?
Have fun and come out of this process enriched, because every time I have done this exercise, I have learned not just about the company, I have learned a lot more about myself, the kind of biases that I have, the kind of the things that should contributing to making you a better person as a result of this. Choose your problems and enjoy the process of trying to solve them.
So thank you so much, and it was a pleasure interacting with you, and I'm sure students will benefit enormously by the practical insights that you give.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's always a pleasure being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.